We're the only company outside of China that is fully focused on igneous phosphate rock and 100% for the LFP battery industry with no ties to fertilizer.
Welcome back to Rockstock Channel. It is Monday, December 1st, and we're here for the first time with John Passalacqua, CEO of First Phosphate. First Phosphate is a mineral development company dedicated to building and onshoring a vertically integrated mine-to-market LFP battery supply chain for North America. The company's flagship Bégin-Lamarche property in Quebec is one of North America's rare igneous phosphate resources, yielding high-purity phosphate with minimal impurities. Back in 2022, my interest in this topic was piqued by an article I read in my partner Matt Fernley's Battery Materials Review, in which he presented an in-depth analysis of the LFP supply chain. He noted in that article that while nickel and cobalt, in addition to lithium, were a worry for NCA and NMC battery chemistries, most industry participants assumed that for lithium iron phosphate batteries, LFP, only lithium was a concern because the iron and phosphate were easy to find and were super abundant. There should be no issues with the supply chain, they argued, despite the huge planned increase in LFP cell production capacity. Matt noted in that article that he begged to differ. His analysis identified phosphoric acid, a key intermediate material in the production of lithium iron phosphate for the battery material supply chain, as a major potential pinch point in the supply chain. I'd like to highlight that in the past 2 years' downturn in the lithium market, Rodney, Matt, and I have identified early and brought to our audience's attention a few other unique critical mineral stories that have attracted a lot of investor attention this year. Hyperion X in titanium, Power Metals in cesium, and the Metals Company, the leading company to build the successful business in seafloor mining. We see similar potential in First Phosphate going into 2026. Battery energy storage and the critical minerals to support it has become a dominant narrative to support the step-changing growth of electricity demand to stay ahead of the AI arms race. And LFP, rather than NMC or NCA batteries, is the dominant chemistry for BESS applications. When we were approached by John last month to participate in First Phosphate's recent private placement, we took the opportunity to subscribe, and for full disclosure, have since become an advisor to the company. But as always, please note that we are not financial advisors. This video is for informational and educational purposes only, and nothing you will hear today is financial advice. Please do your own research and read the disclaimer at the end of the video. First Phosphate is traded on the Canadian Stock Exchange, ticker symbol PHOS. Stock closed at 85 cents on Friday. Current market cap of about 124 million Canadian dollars is approximately 90 million US. To date, the company has raised nearly $44 million in 10 management-led, non-brokered private placement financing since June 2022. The company currently has 25 million Canadian on the balance sheet, following its most recent placement, which raised $3.5 million and was done at 90 cents and included one warrant at $1.25 with a very short 6-month duration of April 2026. First Phosphate has analyst coverage from Fundamental Research Corp, Hallgarten Company, Emerging Growth Research, and also Noble Financial Group just published a note with a $2.15 Canadian target price. If you'd like these research notes or any other information about First Phosphate, please email us at rockstockchannel@rkequity.com or visit First Phosphate's website, firstphosphate.com, and follow them on LinkedIn and X at First Phosphate. You could also follow CEO John Passalacqua on LinkedIn, which will flash up here on the screen. And finally, before we dig in with John, we'd like to thank our sponsors, Lithium Royalty Corp and USCF Investments. Lithium Royalty Corp is traded on the Toronto Stock Exchange, ticker symbol LARC, and holds more than 30 royalties on hard rock and brine lithium projects such as Core Lithium in Australia, Sigma Lithium in Brazil, and TreQ and Mariana projects owned by Zijin and Ganfeng in Argentina. And USCF Investments is a pioneer in commodity ETFs for nearly 20 years. Their 15 funds include single commodity exposure, broad diversification with SDCI, and themes like ZSB for battery metals and USG for gold with income. To find out more, watch our inaugural episode with their CEO, John Love, and visit uscfinvestments.com. And with that, welcome, John, for the first time to Rockstock Channel. Please start by telling us a bit about yourself, what you did before founding First Phosphate, and what attracted you to this project. And then Matt and Rodney will follow with some detailed questions.
Yeah, so I'm John Passalacqua. I'm the CEO of First Phosphate right now. I've been in the financial industry for over about 30 years. I've run my small family office for a number of years now. And when it came down to phosphate, when the war had started between Russia and Ukraine, we were looking for an acid phosphate mainly around agriculture, but quite by accident while we were in there, we spotted this very important igneous phosphate rock in Saguenay-Lac-Saint-Jean, Quebec, and having the technology background, I just looked at it quickly, understood that, this purity profile, which maybe was too much at the time for fertilizer, was just perfect for a LFP battery. So the rest is history. I not only invested in the company, I invested about $2 million in my own money, but also became the CEO. We have a great board and management team that's got somewhere between $3 to $4 million collective in the company. And we've raised about $44 million from, mostly friends and family and some good brokers around us, everything non-broker date.
Okay, John, good to talk to you. Just so that people can get an idea for how the value chain works, can you just talk us through the LFP supply chain from the raw material to all the way to the cathode end of the business?
There's something that we've done recently, which is we've taken, from the igneous phosphate rock from Saguenay-Lac-Saint-Jean, Quebec, which will be at our future mine. And we've been able to process it all the way into this, LFP battery. We've done that in 6 steps. So maybe I can just go through the 6 steps and, your viewers can see that on the website as well. We took igneous phosphate rock, and then we concentrated that into phosphate concentrate. The phosphate concentrate, which is very pure at that point, it's about 41% what they call P2O5 or phosphate. That then translates into purified phosphoric acid. We did that with, the largest producer of phosphoric acid in the world. That's Prayon out of Belgium, our partner. And then from there, you take purified phosphoric acid along with iron powder. We had a secondary recovery of magnetite at the property. So GK and Hoganus, which is another, large atomizer of steel powder out of Tennessee, made steel powder for us. So then we took the phosphoric acid and powder. We made a precursor called iron phosphate. From there, we had some lithium carbonate from our friends at Century Lithium in Nevada. And with that, we were able to make LFP cathode active material, LFP CAM. And then from there, we did is with a Nouveau Monde Graphite out of Montreal, who gave us the battery grade graphite. We were able to put together, again, these, world's first LFP batteries made fully from critical minerals from North America, the USA and Canada, 2 of 4 of Quebec, one out of Nevada as well. So we were able to put these together. These have not been made in North America in over 25 years. LFP technology, as you know, was invented in North America, but we quickly lost it by about 2001, 2002. We only ever got to small scale commercial. And this is the first batch of small scale commercial that was remade in 25 years. And these were cycled 2,000 times. That obviously means, charged and discharged 2,000 times. So they function just like commercial batteries, even though there was only 150 of them made. So, a really big moment here in the fact that, this whole supply chain was, restructured here in North America for the first time in 25 years.
Okay, and you've talked a little bit about it. We've talked a little bit about it, but can you just sort of talk a little bit about the difference between sedimentary phosphate rock, which is obviously very common, and igneous phosphate rock, which is considerably less common, and also the context of that from the point of view of the battery supply chain?
Yeah, that's a great question, Matt. So basically, what goes into making LFP cathode active material is you could say it's phosphate, but it's really the highest form of purification of phosphate, which is, purified phosphoric acid. So purified phosphoric acid is made from regular phosphate. Now, the two types of phosphate are, as you mentioned correctly, were, sedimentary phosphate, which has a lot of impurities in it, a lot of cadmium, uranium, and thorium in it. And that's generally used for fertilizers. It's, refined one time, and then it's thrown back on the farm field. So you don't need a very high purification. But the next step, which is purifying that from that level into purified phosphoric acid, which goes into food and also into batteries, it requires very high purification. So purified phosphoric acid, you'll see, will go into things like Coca-Cola, Colgate, water treatment, uh, cosmetics, pharmaceuticals, a lot of industrial uses. But obviously, the biggest one for us is the LFP battery. So that requires an ultimate purity. So when you're starting with igneous rock is very, very, very clean phosphate that doesn't have all those deleterious elements like cadmium, thorium in it, such as a sedimentary rock does. That when you have that igneous rock, about 90 to 95% of it converts into this purified phosphoric acid. So you're not touching the fertilizer world. You're going direct to the high technology world with this purified phosphoric acid. Whereas when you're processing sedimentary rock, it has a lot to do with its different, purity profiles. But generally, some will say you can process 10, 20, maximum 30% of it to purified phosphoric acid. But even worse, you need all of the rest of it has to go into fertilizer. So you have to have another market. So when you're doing that, you're never really a supplier to the technology industry. You're more of a supplier to the fertilizer industry, and secondarily to the technology industry. And it's only the bigger players in the world that do that have, that massive reach into fertilizer, and then they can go up into purified phosphoric acid. The other problem is obviously with sedimentary rock, if you had to purify all that sedimentary rock in order to get purified phosphoric acid for the needs for the battery, well, okay, say you skim off 20% of the top for the battery. Well, what do you do with the rest of the 80%? I mean, the world's at equilibrium in terms of fertilizers. You'd have to find, all these new fertilizer agricultural fields to spread that on. I mean, you're looking at colonizing Mars and Mercury, maybe, just to get rid of it all. So you need a rock. You need a rock that converts 100% into purified phosphoric acid for the battery without touching the fertilizer world. And that's the beauty. That's exactly what we have here in igneous rock, and it's extremely special.
And to confirm, from my study, it's really the purified phosphoric acid, which is the bottleneck in terms of the LFP supply chain outside China. So that, having a rock that goes into that product, that goes 80 to 100% into that product is a huge advantage. Okay, so we talked a little bit about the grade of the product, the igneous nature of it. Apart from that, and obviously the size of the deposit, which is also reasonably good size, your project also benefits from infrastructure advantages. I mean, this is a sort of semi-bulk material project. So can you talk a little bit about the other infrastructure advantages?
Yeah. So, I mean, the big thing is, when you're moving phosphate, the value of it, the igneous phosphate, is about $300 to $500 US per ton. So you're moving a lot of it, right? It's not like lithium where, once it's processed, you're talking in $10,000 per ton. So you're moving a lot of it. So you have to be near infrastructure. If you're not near infrastructure, you're not going to be economical. So our deposit is sitting basically at 2 to 3 kilometers from major road work. And from there, we're 70 kilometers driving distance from the deep sea port of Saguenay, where it can then be processed into the phosphoric acid, and then can be delivered out by maritime route, which is very great. We're also sitting on electrical grid, and we're also sitting in the area of Saguenay-Lac-Saint-Jean, Quebec, which already has the forestry and the aluminum industries there. And that's not to be overlooked. It's got a lot of workforce, and it has a lot of equipment suppliers that have been supplying, Rio Tinto in the area for a very long time. And so we're very close to major cities, there's 2 cities on either side of the project, smaller ones, very little towns, but there's also larger cities at 30, 40 kilometers, even, 60 kilometers from the mine, which means you don't need to set up, you don't need to leave your family for months on end to go into the mining industry. Like, it's very well received in the area because people can live at home and, commute to work, which would be, a mining project, a small scale open pit mining project. The open pit is also very, very good from the standpoint that it allows you to, to mine this very economically.
Okay. That's great. And can you just tell us where you are with your studies and what sort of OPEX and CAPEX you're targeting at this stage?
Yeah. So right now, we've already drilled about 35,000 meters on the property. We've established a PEA. It's got an NPV of 2.1 billion, IRR of 37%, payback of under 3 years. That's at the lower prices right now for igneous phosphate. But now we have to drill another 35,000 meters, and we're doing that all in one shot over this winter. It started in October of this year, and it will be over by April of 2026. And that will give us a defined resource. So now we're drilling it from 100-meter centers to 50-meter centers, establishing the resource. And after that's done, we can go right into our study, which we hope to have done by the end of 2026. We've already started our environmental work on that. We started our second bulk sample, which is the sample that would be, purposes of, creating the concentrator. And we've also started to work on, some of the engineering work. And like I said, we're hoping to have all of this packaged in a feasibility study, full-scale feasibility study. We've already done internal pre-fees by the end of 2026. And then, we're looking at getting permits in early 2027. To be able to meet the offtakes by 2029. So we're on a very, very accelerated timeline. We've been on that since day one. It's very aggressive, but we hope to be able to continue to execute it in this fashion.
Okay, cool. And you've locked in, I think, just under half of the volume as an offtake with a European offtaker. Why only half of the volume, and what do you get out of the offtake agreement?
Yeah, that's a great question, Matt. So there's two forms of offtake. There's at the mine, which is the offtake for the phosphate concentrate, which I mentioned was step 2, right? You basically concentrating the rock into this high purity apatite phosphate concentrate, which then step 3, it goes into making phosphoric acid. So at the mine site, we're offtaking at about 25% of our material. We hope to produce 900 tons of phosphate concentrate. 200,000 to 400,000 tons is off-taken to European off-taker, but the other 500,000 tons remains back for us so that we can make our value added. Our 500,000 tons will go into making phosphoric acid at the port of Saguenay. So that's why we've only off-taken a small portion of it. We've done that because, there's really no need to off-take too much of this because it's just so in demand out there that you don't want to off-take it too early. And the amount that we have off-taken to date, we've off-taken at market price. So there's no floor, there's no ceiling, there's no nothing. We'll just float with market price, which we assume is going to be going higher, much higher. So that's another, great thing. So we've seen some of the lithium off-takes, have caused problems. So there's no floor, there's no ceiling on this. And we've only off-taken definitively right now about 20 to 25% of that. The bulk of it, 60% is remaining for us to process to phosphoric acid at the port of Saguenay, and we have a small version in the future. But again, don't want to offtake that too soon. Now, when it comes to the phosphoric acid plant at the port of Saguenay, so that will produce 190,000 tons of phosphoric acid, and we have 60,000 tons of that definitively offtaken. And that too, the reason we did that is obviously it makes us bankable. Both offtakes are fully bankable, the one at the mine and the one at the phosphoric acid plant. But it still leaves us with, about 130,000 tons of phosphoric acid for ourselves and for downstream production. And also that 60,000 tons that has been off-taken, that does float as well with the international price. So there's no collars on that, no floors or no steel. So we off-took, that about, 30, 35% of that just to become bankable. But we don't want to do too much of it right now because, again, that is all very precious and it could be off-taken at any time. So you kind of just do just as much as you need to be able to get bankable, but you leave the bulk for yourself or for later, and you don't establish collars around this stuff. You just let it float at market when you feel that, the market price is only going higher.
Okay. And just my final question. So obviously we talked about a bottleneck in the LFP supply chain outside China. Who are your direct competitors with regards to sort of similar phosphate projects, phosphoric acid, LFP outside China?
Yeah, it's interesting. There just doesn't seem to be anybody really out there that has got our business model. Like our business model, and I can say it proudly. I believe that we're probably the only company outside of China, out in the world, that is fully focused on igneous phosphate rock and 100% for the LFP battery industry with no ties to fertilizer. It seems like everybody else out there is in part or in full tied first and foremost to fertilizer. We've always wanted to be focused, and we've always wanted to be pure play, and we've only ever saw the battery. And that's why we're focused here on igneous rock and just the LFP battery industry. I feel with no comparables on that level.
Okay, cool. Rodney, over to you, mate.
Thanks. So, John, if you could just talk us through, you said you had quite an aggressive timeline. Can you sort of explain the process to permitting for a project like yours?
Yeah. So as I was talking before, Rodney, so right now we're finishing off the drilling in one shot, another 35,000 meters ongoing right now, probably one of the largest drilling campaigns in Quebec or in Canada at the moment. That'll be done by the end of April. Continuing with our environmental studies, finishing off our big bulk sample, and the one that basically is representative of what the concentrator will look like. Finishing off other studies around that, preparing a feasibility study by the end of 2026. Then from there, we've got, since we're in Quebec, we've got the Quebec BAPE, Bureau des Audiences Publiques sur l'Environnement, which basically is, going before the population and discussing environmental aspects and asking questions. And then the environmental impact study all put together, and obtaining those permits. We hope to obtain those permits, I would say, by Q2 2027. And then from there, you get into, detailed engineering, financing discussions, at that time, mostly non-dilutive, to build out the concentrator. And then the mine hopefully will be operational and running by mid-2029. Again, very aggressive timelines, but I do believe that in electrification, and especially with LFP, especially with the lithium coming online, we need to get the phosphate online right away, or there's going to be bottlenecks for the lithium. So we believe that the quicker that we can do this project, the quicker that we can get it online, the better for everybody and the more value that it will have. So we're hoping to have the mine operating by 2029, mid 2029, also because that's when our off-takers want us to be operational. And it's the same time that we can also get phosphoric acid plant operational at the same time, which will be, taking in a large part, more than half of that mine, for its own consumption and production of phosphoric acid. Now, if the phosphoric acid plant were a little bit delayed, the phosphate concentrate can be sold anywhere else in the world. It's of the finest quality. But we're hoping to have both projects up and running by mid 2029, which is, it's very aggressive, and it consists a lot of work every day, which we like to do.
And in terms of local and national government, have you had good support? Is there prospects for possibly grants as opposed to soft funding and that kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, look, the government's been very supportive on especially on the local level, local municipal level, the local indigenous group of Mastoyash. We find that, in this business, local is really important. It's sometimes more important provincial and federal, because that's where your support base is. Those are the people that, want or don't want the mines. We're very well supported at the local level. Quebec, as well, as expressed a letter of interest. Obviously, we have large discussions with the federal government. Minister Hodgson just visited our site of our phosphoric acid plant a few months ago. And also the federal government just put in $57 million at the Port of Saguenay for a second wharf. There's already one wharf. The second wharf obviously helps to expand the minerals that would come in and out of there. And believe it or not, that's right underneath our property. So, that's already a major, if you will, a piece of infrastructure being built by the government. There's, programs that we've applied to as well. I believe that's all forthcoming. There's a lot of, grant work that's coming in Canada. They've announced some of their very large major projects, but now they're starting to drill down to some of the more medium to smaller projects. And we hope that at that point, we'll see some good movement from folks like us.
Right. And in terms of you having held back some potential offtake, would you consider something along the lines of a strategic partner, or are you thinking more to go it alone?
Well, I mean, we already have strategic partners at the table. So, Prayon, which is the world's largest producer of purified phosphoric acid, they're providing us technology to make the second transformation into phosphoric acid. GK and Hoganess out of Tennessee, the world's largest atomizer of steel powder, is going to be incorporating some of our secondary recovery of magnetite into the making process and providing us back the powder. So we have quite large strategic partners at the table. And, we're always looking to court others, but we really think that, the big break is going to be when lithium actually has to start producing something in the West, right? A lot of great lithium projects out there, especially the downstream ones that are, the carbonate and the hydroxide. But at some point, what does that go into? Does that go into NMC batteries? And if at that point, well, then where's the nickel, manganese, and cobalt? Or does it go probably most likely into LFP batteries, right? Which are now 80% of the batteries out there. And you see all kinds of announcements every day where a lot of these gigafactory concepts in North America are now starting to move towards LFP. Well, when the lithium's there, where does the P come from, right? So that's where we probably see, some strategic partnership or really, just a need for this phosphate. Otherwise, how do we get past the hydroxide and the carbonate? I know the big thing in the lithium world was always, about, the largest deposit, having the deposit. Now the talk is more around processing, downstream processing. Okay. But once we're past that, once we've got carbonate and hydroxide at the table, how do we get into that CAM material, right? And that's where I think the P is really important. And that's where I think, we fit in very strategically with the lithium world, if that's a good enough answer there on that.
That's great. Thanks. Howard?
Yeah, and that's, this overall battery linkage is what attracted us to the story, John. As I mentioned, we just didn't, know any iron companies or phosphate companies. So really appreciate your having reached out to us. You did I want to point the viewers to your investor presentation, which will include a link in the show notes. But if you want that directly from us, feel free to reach out again at rockstockchannel@rkequity.com. But I'm on one slide here, and you said you did have a PEA. I don't know when that PEA came out, but it had an NPV of 2.1 billion Canadian, IRR of 37%, 2.9-year payback, and 23-year mine life. Like, just comparing that to a lithium company or any other project, that those are attractive numbers. What was the CapEx for that, and what was that for? That was, I guess, just for the on your slide where you have step 1, step 2, step 3. I think that's step 1 and 2. Is that right? But not the phosphoric acid piece.
Yeah, perfect, Howard. That's exactly it. So for step 1 and 2, which is operating the mine and concentrating it, that will require about $480 million US investment, which is, is quite reasonable. And that's why we kept this mine, small to medium sized mine, because when these mines generally for phosphate are out there, they think, massive, large, big for fertilizer. But we realized that for LFP, we didn't need extremely large. We needed extremely focused, clean rock and focused just on the LFP battery industry. So that has allowed us to keep our CapEx down, because if you remember, until just very recently, everyone was very grumpy around CapEx, even around the lithium projects. So we kind of learned from that, and we've been able to keep our CapEx on those first 2 steps, like you accurately pointed out, which is concentration down to $480 million US to get that up and running. And we've got quite a few players at the table. We've got Exim Bank of the United States already at the table for 170 million expressions of interest from our indigenous group, from Quebec government, and from a number of other banks as far away as Europe on that.
Okay, so if you were to make it just an analog to a lithium story, your focus really is like kind of spodumene. It's like mining and concentrating and shipping that product further downstream, is not embedded in that 480 million, but it like Nouveau Monde you mentioned is like a vertically integrated project. Century Lithium, which you also referenced, is an integrated mine, plus chemical story. So your PEA, is largely focused as if it was a spodumene mine, but it's a phosphate mine, and concentrator. So what are milestones? I guess what does 2026 look like? Are you advancing to like a feasibility study, and should investors expect news flow over the course of the next number of weeks and quarters?
Yeah, that's a good question. So obviously, our big milestone is the feasibility study by end of 2026. We're approaching towards that with, the full definition of the resource by end of April of 2026. Like I said, we're working through our metallurgy, which is almost done, our environmental reports, which are well along the way. And also, we're still working towards building towards the downstream part of it as well, which is the phosphoric acid plant, and eventually to LFP cathode active material.
Great. I think why don't we leave it at that for now, John? This was a great introduction, and like we mentioned earlier, full disclosure, we have invested in the recent placement, are an advisor to First Phosphate, and you should expect to be hearing on this channel, more from John over the coming weeks, as and when news flow warrants. Okay, and thanks again, John. And before we conclude, just want to thank again our sponsors, USCF Investments, who have been making it easier to get exposure to commodities investments for almost 20 years. USCF Sustainable Battery Metals Strategy Fund, ZSB, is designed to capture investment exposure to metals powering electrification, such as lithium, cobalt, copper, nickel, aluminum, and silver. To learn more, watch our inaugural episode with CEO John Love and visit uscfinvestments.com. I may need to speak to USCF Investments because the phosphate wasn't listed there. So we'll see what we do. And thanks as well to Lithium Royalty Corp, which just published their Q3 results, which demonstrated 86% growth in revenue from last year's third quarter, which included first royalty payment from their 3Q project operated by Zijin Mining in Argentina. To read that press release, visit their website, lithiumroyaltycorp.com, and follow them on X at lithium_royalty. So, John, nice to see you. Have a good week, and look forward to talking very soon.
Thank you, Howard, Matt, Rodney. Appreciate it.
Thanks, John.